This is Ben Davison. Subscribe to Stephen Icon.
Now, Ben Davison, he had a hour-long chat with IFL TV, and it's a very interesting one. I like Ben Davison. I've liked him for quite some time, and what he's done with Tyson Fury, from where Tyson Fury was to where he is now, is absolutely remarkable. Now, of course, inevitably, when you speak to Ben Davison or Tyson Fury or Wilder or Joshua, the triangle of names is going to be mentioned, of course. And within this one, he spoke about Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury on December the 1st in Los Angeles, and how the fight was scored a draw officially. And he said pretty much the same thing that I said. Tyson Fury was robbed. And he was robbed. And he alluded to the fact that Deontay Wilder is in fact now a paper champion, and Tyson Fury is the real WBC heavyweight champion of the world. It's just that he doesn't physically have the title. So a fight between him and Joshua is effectively for undisputed in a great deal of many people's eyes. The fight with Deontay Wilder is a fight that should never have taken place. On paper, it should never have taken place this early in Tyson Fury's comeback. You don't go through everything that Tyson Fury's gone through and then fight two taxi drivers and then a champion of the world. You just don't do that. Okay, but Tyson Fury did, and it was suggested to Ben that we've now seen the best of Tyson Fury, but we haven't seen the best of Deontay Wilder. And again, Ben Davison says the exact same thing that I do. That was the best of Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder cannot improve on that. He's too old now, is my idea. I feel that Deontay Wilder has been doing what he's been doing for far too long. He can't get out of the groove. He can't adapt. Okay, he's a one-trick pony. Listen, he's been very effective with it against B-class fighters. When you go up against elite fighters, that style doesn't work. And he has effectively been exposed in his last two fights. We always knew that he can be hurt and he can be hit. We always knew that. Listen, it's a boxing fight. Okay, you can't swim without getting wet. It's just the nature of the beast. You're going to get hit. And he has shown more heart than what I ever thought that he had. But the thing is, when he goes up against a boxer, he doesn't know how to handle it. He had a mental block of throwing that right hand. He said this in the post-fight interviews recently, where he says that, I don't know what it was, I just couldn't throw my right hand. Well, it's the same thing that Vladimir Klitschko had, so clearly it's a mental thing that Tyson Fury is putting on to his opponents. Anyway, so he says that Deontay Wilder, that is the best Deontay Wilder. He's not going to improve at all. Whereas Tyson Fury, that was a 70%. Tyson Fury, it's what I've been saying. That was not the peak Tyson Fury. If they were to fight again, Tyson Fury, his percentage of getting towards 100% would be a lot closer than what it was December the 1st. So maybe a rematch with Deontay Wilder, you'd probably expect Tyson Fury to be, 80 to 90%. So better than what he was in the first fight. That would be the theory, right? And anyway, inevitably, it turns on to Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury. And Ben Davison, he says the same thing that Frank Warren said. 50-50. It's a 50-50 fight. Not saying it's a 50-50 fight as in anyone can win it. They're saying 50-50 split, 50%. Okay? Now, there's arguments for this one and there's arguments against it. Okay? Now, they could just be playing the highball game. So, really, what they're really going to accept is 40%, but we're going to start at 50%. Much like what Joseph Parker and David Higgins and Kevin Barry and that were doing, 50-50, that kind of thing, and then knock it down to the kind of percentage that they were actually happy with. It could be that tactic, of course, but there is arguments for a 50-50 and there's arguments against it. Now, the arguments for it is the fact that all the belts that Joshua currently has, okay, he had to collect them one at a time, but all the belts that Joshua had were once all owned by Tyson Fury, and Tyson Fury never lost them in the ring. He didn't lose them in the ring for a number of reasons. Most notably because he wasn't fighting. Okay, for 2.5 years, 3 years, he just wasn't fighting. So of course, you're not going to lose your titles. And he did lose his titles through, some of it was self-inflicted. He says this himself. Don't feel sorry for me or give me sympathy for something that I've done to myself. These are Tyson Fury's own words. So, yes, Tyson Fury once owned all the belts that Joshua currently has. Okay? So people will always say that Tyson Fury is the true champion. But others will say, but Tyson Fury only had to beat one man to get all those belts. Joshua had to go through 3 different men, including the same man that Tyson Fury won those belts off in Vladimir Klitschko. So it's always going to be that argument, which is why these two need to fight, need to settle it, really, don't they? And as far as percentage splits goes, we don't really care, do we? It's a case of, are you guys going to fight? That's all we want to know. Exactly the same with Wilder. Are you going to fight? That's all we want to know. But with a 50-50, yes. Again, we could also say that because Tyson Fury, he did go to America and he did defeat Deontay Wilder. That's a very broad perspective that most people agree on. Tyson Fury should be sat there and he should have been having his Christmas lunch with the WBC title on his fireplace. And he should be celebrating the new year with the WBC title added to his collection. That's how it should be. So effectively, Joshua versus Fury, undisputed. Now, again, why is 50-50 a legitimate request? Because of the fact that Tyson Fury once owned all these titles. And the fact is 2 British guys in the biggest fight in boxing. There is no bigger fight than Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury. Joshua versus Wilder would do very, very well. Joshua versus Dillian Whyte would do very, very well. But Joshua versus Tyson Fury would do better. That's just how it is. Because both of these guys bring star power. Whereas Joshua versus Wilder, it's Joshua that's bringing the star power, not Wilder. We've seen that with Tyson Fury and Wilder. We've seen that. It was Tyson Fury who brought the eyes to the TV. It was him that sold that pay-per-view. It was him that brought attention to that fight. Not Wilder. Wilder brought, 10%, if that? But it was Tyson Fury. He has that star quality. So it's 2 stars coming together in an epic clash. So it's a legitimate ask for 50-50. But the downside of it is the fact that, and let's be perfectly honest, now if these guys do fight, I am on the fence as to who wins and if it's a draw, if it's whoever loses. Listen, I'm on the fence with both these. I've consistently said it that Dillian Whyte is my guy. Okay, but Joshua against Tyson Fury, I'm literally on the fence. I don't care who wins. I really don't. And I've always said that it will be Joshua by knockout or Tyson Fury on points if Tyson Fury can get back to where he once was. And now he's had that fight with Wilder. He's a step closer to getting back to where he once was. He's still not there yet, but he's almost there. So a Tyson Fury next fight will be a much better Tyson Fury than the one that fought Deontay Wilder beginning of the month. So reasons why 50-50 is unreasonable. Fact is, no matter how you look at it, Anthony Joshua does own the belts. He physically has them. Tyson Fury does not physically have them. Much like with the WBC, people will see Tyson Fury as the legitimate WBC heavyweight champion. He should be. And yes, he should be. But he doesn't physically have it. Lineal. His lineal only goes back to Vladimir Klitschko. Again, that's a fact. People love to glamorize the lineal with Tyson Fury. Me, I do too. For me, I'm more than happy for him to be lineal. He's a British fighter. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But the fact is, it only goes back to Vladimir Klitschko. Because lineal should only ever be reinstated if there was an undisputed fight. Because obviously the line ended with Lennox Lewis. Well, in fact, it ended on a couple of occasions before him, but Lennox Lewis is the most recognised for lineal. But nobody ever beat Lennox Lewis because he retired with the lineal status. Vladimir Klitschko was given it because he was considered the man, I suppose. But they did it before undisputed because he was never going to fight his brother Vitaly for it. So that's why they give it to him rather than him having to be undisputed. But either way, it just is how it is. If you want to call Tyson lineal, fine. If you don't, fine. But fact is, Tyson Fury has no physical belt. He just doesn't. All he's bringing is star status. That's what he's bringing, which is enough. There's too much emphasis on the belts, let's be real. But he's bringing that star quality. And yes, the Ring Magazine title will be on the line also. Tyson Fury was the last owner of the Ring Magazine. They took it off of him because his inactivity for so long, and when he was coming back, he was never going to fight the best of the best out there. He was always going to be fighting a couple of knockovers just to get back into it. So they said, you know what, we're going to take the Ring Magazine off you, and the only way we are now going to take it from vacant and put it on the line is for number 1 versus number 2. When they did that, it was Joshua, number 1, number 2, Deontay Wilder, according to their rankings. But since the Wilder and Fury fight, they've now said, listen, we believe that Tyson Fury won that fight handedly, so therefore we rate him as number 2. So therefore, Joshua versus Wilder would not have the Ring Magazine title on the line. They could do it, but they've already said they're going to keep it vacant until number 1 versus number 2. So Joshua versus Wilder, going by their own words, would not have the Ring Magazine title on the line, but Joshua versus Tyson Fury would. How important is Ring Magazine? Ultimately, not that important in the reality of it, but it's a title that every fighter in the world wants. It's the people's champion, I suppose. It's the legitimate title for the people. Ring Magazine, of course, it has some kind of links with Golden Boy, right? I haven't looked at it too much, but this is pretty much what I've heard. But regardless, it's number 1 versus number 2. Joshua is number 1. Tyson Fury is number 2. So that title will be in the line. So yes, Joshua needs Tyson Fury for that belt to be on the line if he's belt collecting. So is it reasonable 50-50? Yes. Is it unreasonable? Yes, of course it is. Because as I said, Joshua not only has the physical titles, but he also brings the money. Tyson Fury has never really brought the money. And again, that's the fact. When he was meant to have Vladimir Klitschko rematch in Manchester, it just wasn't selling. It just wasn't. But now, everything that he's gone through, I think he's more of a star now than what he was back then. Back then, he wanted to be the star. Now, I don't think he cares too much. But yet, it's almost reversed it. When he wanted it, he wasn't getting it. Now he's not too bothered. He's getting it. So, yes, it's reasonable to ask 50-50. It's also unreasonable to ask for 50-50 for all those reasons. It's unreasonable because Joshua does have the physical belts and Joshua is the cash cow still. But it's reasonable in the sense of the Ring Magazine will be on the line, and Tyson Fury does bring star quality. He is the reason why Wilder versus Fury did quite well. It didn't do brilliant, but it did quite well because of Tyson Fury. It is the biggest fight in boxing. Wilder versus Joshua is only big because you've got the name Undisputed. But it's not because Wilder's there, it's because he holds the 25% left that Joshua needs for Undisputed. That's why Wilder's even talking. It's a talking point. Kubrat Pulev could have the WBC title and it would be just a bigger fight. It's just how it is. But with Tyson Fury, that's a different animal. So is Ben Davison right? 50-50? Is he saying it because they're saying literally this fight is not going to happen unless it's 50-50? What could they do about that? They could potentially have, okay then, so on Sky Sports, Joshua gets all the pay-per-view. On BT Sport, Tyson Fury gets all the pay-per-view. In other words, do like a collab between Sky Sports and BT. But would Sky Sports do that? Again, Sky Sports are the A side. BT Sport, as far as boxing goes, it's a newborn baby, okay? It's just coming through. So Sky Sports are less likely to want to do a collab. It should be a case of, well, no, we're going to do all of it. But would they do that? Who knows? Maybe they would. Just to have this fight, they would just do some kind of collab to say, okay, everything on pay-per-view is 50-50 or the gate receipt is 50-50 and whatever it may be. Tyson Fury gets all the BT, Joshua gets all the Sky Sports. They could do that. But it's a complicated mess. And of course, if you throw in the promoters on top of it, with Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, it's a cocktail for disaster. It really is. These guys don't particularly like each other. There's more hate on the Frank Warren side towards Eddie Hearn because he just sees him as a jumped up whatever. So again, there is difficulties with it. But again, if you're asking for 50-50, Why suddenly are you asking for 50-50 against Joshua, but you didn't get 50-50 against Deontay Wilder? How do we know that? Because the guaranteed purse, guaranteed flat fee, was $4 million for Wilder, $3 million for Tyson Fury. That's how we know it's not 50-50. So if you're not getting 50-50 with Wilder, why should you get 50-50 with Joshua when you didn't get the physical belt? That's just how it is. But ultimately, if it turns out 50-50, I'm cool with it because it's a massive, massive fight. If not, if this fight doesn't happen, then for me, I'm cool. And I hope that it's Dillian Whyte versus Tyson Fury. That's a very interesting fight. Anyway, drop your thoughts below about it. I'll put the video for Ben Davison in the description box. So if you haven't seen it, go give it a watch. Drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, and of course subscribe. Catch you all on the next video.